Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show, where we talk about all components of business and how to utilize them for exponential growth. My name is Athin Cassiotis. I'm a business growth expert where I help business owners grow and scale to create wealth and freedom. And today, I have an awesome guest. His name is Chris Beall. And for 30 years, Chris has led software startups as a founder or early stage developer. And he believes the most powerful part of a software system is the human being, and that the value key is to let the computer do what it does well. Go fast without getting bored in order to free up human potential. And Chris is currently the CEO of ConnectAndSell, based in Silicon Valley, and hosts a podcast at MarketDominanceGuys.com. And ConnectAndSell is the world's only technology that gets your best salespeople 10 times more live conversations with qualified prospects every day. Welcome, Chris Beall, and thank you for being on my show.
Fantastic to be here, Athin.
Awesome, mate. I'm sure it's going to be a great show for everyone watching and listening today. So you're a very successful entrepreneur. So for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself by telling us about you and your journey.
Sure. I mean, I grew up in the desert out north of Scottsdale. My family moved out there where there were no people in 1957. I don't know if anybody knows where Scottsdale is in Arizona, but this is out in the desert. So I was raised by books and animals. There were no people. And I don't know what I learned more from. There were a lot of books and there were a lot of animals. But somewhere along the way, I was about to take a job teaching school. I was going to teach physics in my old high school. My high school teacher took me aside and said, I don't want you to take this job. And mind you, we'd conspired about this for more than a year. She said, I want you to go start companies. And she revealed to me that she was this thing called an angel investor, which I thought was odd. I said, is that a good business, investing in angels? I mean, it sounds good, but I don't know, like, how do you hold board meetings? And she said, no, I invest in my former students, go. And so she sent me out into the world to start companies. Step one is to work for them because you got to understand what they're about. And so I got into the computer and computer software business just because it was obviously something with a great future. This was a while ago, 1979. I got sufficiently pissed off at enough problems that were out there that I kind of joined up with a little startup in 1983, and I've been doing startups ever since. I'm in love with software startups because they're very lightweight. I've done a bunch of them, and yet they're still real businesses done correctly. I know in Silicon Valley, they often are not. They're sort of like an inflatable balloon or something, you just pump them full of venture capital and pretend you have a business. But there is a way of doing startups that is like any other business, like a services business or any other business, where you seek traction first. Make sure you go slowly enough that you understand the problems your customers are having. You have this very lightweight way of making your product better. I mean, if you have a hardware product, it's hard to make it better because you're kind of stuck. Services is really, really easy to mold. Software is kind of in between. But software is also scalable. So it's pretty rare to have something that you can mold and scale and, magic can happen. Of course, you can also go out of business quite easily. So I've been doing that ever since. One startup after another. Some of them have been great. Some of them have been odd. I did one floor finishing company, which was not a software company, and crashed that sucker into a wall at about 12,000 miles an hour and realized I should go back to the software business where I am today.
Yeah, awesome. What a story. And I love that you went down the path of obviously learning it and then, create a lot of businesses and obviously where you are today. And so I know you're big on sales, right, in terms of what you do now. And let's talk about the CEO, because we've got a lot of business owners and CEOs here in the business. And what's the role, right, in terms of sales and selling? Because it's not just about the growth and building the revenue, but it's more about understanding your business. So do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, that nails it. I mean, it's about understanding your business, right? Your business ultimately is your customers. Whatever problem you think they have some subtly different problem than that. You've missed something. You will never find that something you've missed unless you go out in the front lines and you sell. The information that comes back from your sales staff is just a little bit muted. It's what is a salesperson trying to do? They're trying to make quota. They're trying to get stuff done. And there's a lot of kind of selection bias in the information that comes back to you, the CEO. And you need to know some things that just aren't obvious. I mean, I have an example. I'm sort of wearing it right now. It's called Flight School. At Connect and Sell, we never wanted to offer training. Training made no sense to us, and we're a software company. But in being out on the front line selling one particular deal, I realized the missing ingredient was that this company that was in dire straits, what they needed was a lot more conversations, and yet they sucked. So we call that amplifying suck. Well, if your business is amplifying suck, it's not so great, even if it looks like it's good, right? So our salespeople never told me, hey, boss, we're amplifying suck out there. But by being on the front lines and being in that deal, I could see it with my own eyes. I could hear it, and I could explore it with, in this case, the owner of that company. It's like, how about if we provided you people with some training? We know a lot about cold calling. We listen to more cold calls than everybody on earth combined. How about if we take them through a, high pressure, put the voice under pressure. Let's see if we can teach them how to open in 7 seconds without freaking out. And it's an example of something that became super important. It's not a very important product for us, but it's a super important part of our offering because it allows our customers to combine lots of conversations with great conversations. How do you get there, right? So I think CEOs have got to sell. I don't think that ever stops. I think you have to sell throughout. Otherwise, your information flow is attenuated and obscured, a little bit foggy, and you'll just make stupid decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, always the revenue generating stuff, right? That we should be focusing on as the higher level, like the CEO area there with the sales conversation. Awesome stuff there. And I know you focus a lot in B2B, which is business to business for those people that don't know what it means, and building trust, right? With buyers is a business imperative. So do you want to talk more about the importance of building trust and maybe some ways there that we can build trust as well?
Yeah, B2B is funny, right? Everybody is saying nowadays, oh, B2B and B2C, business to consumer, are converging because everybody's a consumer and they want to get in their business experience the kind of low friction, high touch, everything's easy, that you get in your consumer experience, except for me at Target today trying to buy this Fitbit that I'm wearing, where I got to stand there for 45 minutes while somebody tried to figure out that they didn't know how to speak Portuguese, which I could have told them right off. But in B2C, we expect to be treated in a certain way. And in B2C businesses kind of think that's going to get the job done. B2B has another problem. The buyer, that person who's buying, whether they're a CEO or whether they're a mid-manager or whatever, they're committing their company's money to something. It's probably not going to be perfect. They know it's not going to be perfect. They've been told wonderful things by the salesperson. They've done their diligence, but they know Murphy's Law is going to show up at some time. So who's going to be held accountable? Well, the person who made the buying recommendation. Let's buy from this vendor. Let's buy this product. So immediately you have a fearsome competitor called do nothing, because do nothing comes with zero risk to that individual. And that individual is who you've got to sell to in B2B. So you have a problem. The problem is that person needs to trust you with their career, not with their money. It's not their money. Even if you're the owner, it's still not quite your money unless you're a solopreneur. It's your team's success. It's your company's success. So business buyers are ultra cautious. And the way you can deal with that caution, the only way to deal with it, is for them to trust you more than they trust themselves to make a decision. So Anthony Iannarino has got a wonderful book called Elite Sales Strategies, just came out last year. And the introduction opens with this quote: people buy from people they trust to make a decision they don't trust themselves to make. I think it's a marvelous quote for two reasons. One is I think it's just spot on. The other is he stole it from me, but at least he attributed to it. So it's like, hey, cool, Anthony, you used my quote in a book and you didn't tell me. So, hey, everybody likes to see their name in print, right? So now B2B, we have this problem. We've got to build trust, and it always starts with a stranger. So the core problem of B2B is actually not how to demonstrate value, how to take somebody through sort of a path in which they see value in your solution. The core problem you have to solve is, how can you get a stranger to trust you, and how long do you have to do it? And we've been told by experts, there's an expert named Chris Voss, a lot of people have read his book, Never Split the Difference, I think it's something like How to Negotiate, like your life depends on it, or something like that. I shouldn't butcher your title, Chris, sorry. But He told me at an event one evening at a dinner, I asked him, how long do we have to get trust in a cold call? And he said 7 seconds, just like that. And I went, whoa, 7 seconds. Our research says 8 seconds. And he said, your research is wrong. It's 7 seconds. And that's pretty profound when you think about it, right? If you've got to get somebody to trust you more than they trust themselves, and then you go to the other end when you first meet them, you probably are ambushing them because they're not in your room. So here you are speaking with them for the first time, maybe on the phone. Now you're an invisible stranger they're afraid of. And you've got to take that situation and get them to trust you in 7 seconds, or it's too late. It's too late for the relationship. And at that point, if it takes 8 seconds or you fail in 7 and you're not going to get it done in 8, then you're going to lose to no decision. You don't know why you lose. You lost way back in the first 7 seconds.
Yeah, I love that. So powerful. How you broke all that down in some great books and that you mentioned there too. And I guess a lot of this, obviously in that first 7 seconds, comes down to some nitty-gritty in the voice inflection and things like that, right? Because you don't have a lot of time. It's how you're portraying yourself in that trust building from that start. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what we can do in that 7 seconds that's going to help us to build that trust?
Sure. Well, thank God I asked Chris a follow-on question, which is, what do we have to do in those 7 seconds? And he said, oh, it's easy. And I'm thinking, it's easy, right? I'm looking down. That's his second bourbon. It can't be. The guy doesn't look like a lightweight. I think he's very sober. Why is he saying it's easy? He says, no, it's easy. All we have to do is to show that other person that we see the world through their eyes. We call it tactical empathy. Then we need to demonstrate to them that we're competent to solve a problem they have right now. And I said, well, right now, isn't the problem they have right now me? Like, I'm the problem, right? And he says, bingo, that's why you can't fail. You can't fail as long as you show that you're competent to solve the problem that is you, which you surely are, because you can just go away. But why don't you put a condition on going away? I said, okay, so here's what we teach people to say. Is this okay? And he says, well, what is it? And I said, well, it's like this. We teach them to say, I know I'm an interruption. Can I have 27 seconds tell you why I called? And he mimicked me, including the little hand gesture. I don't know why I do it, but it goes up twice. And he said, it's perfect because the first part where you say, I know I'm an interruption, you throw yourself under the bus. You indict yourself before they can indict you. That's how they see the world. You're guaranteed to know that's how they see the world. So just agree with them. But you can't apologize. You're just stating a bald fact. And then you switch your voice to a playful, curious voice. He says, I said, is that like a real voice name? He says, yeah, in the FBI, we call it playful, curious. And you're basically saying, come along with me. Come along with me. We'll go somewhere. Where the place we're going to go is where I'm gone. I'm out of here. Your problem goes away. So I'm offering you a path to solving your problem. So now you're stuck. Your midbrain says, trust me. Now I just have to not blow it.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. So, it's 2 millimeter shifts a lot of the time, right? These little things make a massive difference in the sales conversation and business and everything like that, which I love. Thanks for sharing. Let's just go a little bit deeper because obviously we want to build that trust. And yes, we've got the cold call. I just want to see it from the other angle now about obviously relationships, right? Business is a lot about relationships, especially in B2B. There is, not just the cold call element, but then going, okay, well, who is connected to who, or how can I build relationships with people that can also, obviously build trust and connections and get into places, right? That may be challenging otherwise. So I want to talk a little bit more about that as well.
Well, to me, it's one of the reasons you should just talk to people. And it's interesting, I see folks who travel who will sit up there and maybe they're even sitting in the nice seats up front or whatever, and they'll sit there reading their book, or they'll sleep, or they'll do whatever. And here you have this wonderful opportunity, hopefully not to annoy somebody, but to have an actual conversation with somebody you don't know. And it's the same thing in, say, the opportunity to sit in on a discovery call that one of your sales reps is doing, or to go to an event that you don't really think makes an awful lot of sense. You can always be like, oh, I'm so tough with my time. My calendar is a sacred castle. No one can get on it. But the fact of the matter is, when we speak with people, we discover commonalities. You and I spoke before we started this conversation. We have a commonality. Anybody watching this can see it, but in case you're just doing this on audio, like a podcast, we each have a cruise ship behind us in our background. And the cruise ship I saw was in the harbor of the cruise ship behind you. And that gave us something to talk about. And those kinds of things, I think, allow us to discover a little more about somebody and begin to form relationships that aren't all about transactions. Because, I mean, transaction is almost the opposite of a relationship. And if we create relationships with the intent to transact, they tend to be, I don't know, a little bit flawed, right? You went in with a false premise, which is, I don't care about you. I just want you to buy something from me. So it's really interesting to me. Same on LinkedIn, you know, if you're sincere in, like, say, congratulating somebody on something, right? You have a master's degree. You put it out there that you got your master's. A lot of people congratulated you. That's great. How many of those were bots? Who knows, right? But there are congratulation bots on LinkedIn. So can you ever really believe that somebody's bot is being sincere? I don't know. If they're congratulating me, I'm probably going to go with it and say it's, you know, it's great because I love myself. But you know, taking that extra time on LinkedIn, doing it in an email, that follow-up email after a conversation, the one that is the magic one that you get to say thank you for our conversation today. Well, you know, mean it, right? Do it, but mean it, because people can detect lack of sincerity. I always say that, you know, we say wolves can smell fear, right? People can smell insincerity. They feel it. And you're not really building a relationship just by kind of punching through into somebody's world. And especially I get some of these things that are like, hey, will you introduce me to so-and-so? Like, well, I don't know. Is it good for so-and-so that I introduce you to them? Because I'm not doing it because it's good for you. You know, it's got to be good for them, right? It's that mindset that allows us to build relationships. Obviously, the numbers count. I mean, I'm kind of happy. I don't know. I have some ridiculous number of LinkedIn connections. Do I really know all those people fabulously well? No, but it's great to be connected to them because I feel like maybe I can put something out there that they could learn from. There may be some one-to-many in there, and maybe because I'm arrogant enough to think I've learned some things I can share. But there's a subset of them that are kind of like the real deal. And those are the ones where I think you just have to treasure them and allocate some time, maybe every day. I do this poorly, but I kind of think of the Thomas Jefferson kind of folks, you know, who would write to people every day for an hour or two. Maybe we need to go back to the quill pen, slow ourselves down a little, and nurture some of those relationships as something that shows that we cared enough to actually give it some thought and some time.
Yeah, I love that. Very powerful, that section there, about building those relationships and adding value, you know, where we can. So awesome stuff. And, you know, there's always this conception about, you know, sales versus marketing, the age-old conflict and everything like that. You know, which one's the problem? Which one's, you know, going to be the one that we improve? And I know you talk about it can be resolved within the humble cold calls. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's hilarious. Sales, the whole sales and marketing conflict or whatever it's called, you know, alignment, right? When everybody talks about something for years, you know they've made no progress in solving it. That's a certainty. And if they keep changing the name of it, they're doing that to see if they can get a seat at the table, which means, you know, they never will. That's what sales enablement's all about, right? Let's not call it training anymore. Let's call it something else. Maybe they'll give us a seat at the table. No, that won't happen, right? Sounds great, won't happen. So here's the sales and marketing alignment problem, which really comes down to a very fundamental question, which is present versus future. So marketing is told generate leads, but what does that mean? Leads in the present, right? But in all B2B markets for your product, 11/12 of your market is out in the future. They're not in the current quarter. They're not ready for your product right now. They just bought a product like yours, or they did it 6 months ago or whatever. So they're not ready for your solution timing wise. Sales abandons these people, generally speaking, because they don't fit in the quarter or 2 quarters that they're being judged on, that they're being compensated on. It's a very strange thing when you think about it. Now, there's an exception. Business owners tend to learn that nurturing relationships over time is a good idea. Your future customers are consist of people you're talking to now. But in classic sales, like you're a salesperson with a territory and a quota, you're trying to get it done right now. And what's interesting is when you cold call somebody, when you hold a conversation with their midbrain, when you're inside of that trust circle in 7 seconds, there's something funny that happens. Some of them take meetings. We call that sales progress, right? They accept a discovery meeting. They might even show up, about 60% show up. You might be able to reschedule it and say, hey, something important must have come up for you. And now you can have that meeting. That's the sales path. What about the other 95%? What happens to them? Well, in the modern world, here's what happens to them. One, they will open your email. How often? About 90% of the time. Why? Because it's an email within the context of a relationship that you just got started. And you immediately sent it to them and said, thank you for our conversation today. Or better, if you're the boss, you send it on behalf of your salesperson and say, thank you for speaking with my colleague today. That is the most magical thing in the world, right? So they'll open it. Now what? Will they click on the link to some educational, useful thing that's in there? Probably. We have good studies that show that's kind of like a 21 out of 26 times that'll happen, 85%. That's a big, big number. So now you have folks coming to your landing page, coming to your website. Did they say yes to a meeting? No. So now you're doing marketing. That's interesting. So that means 95% of all that happens in a cold call is actually marketing. So sales and marketing actually get aligned in a place nobody's looked, which is inside the cold call, where the minority activity, the tiny activity is the meeting, sometimes happens. The big activity is they come to your website. That's the difference in the modern world. The old cold call, when you knock on their door, well, you are your website. So it's all cool. But nowadays you want them to come to you, and you can spend SEO money and, spruce up your website, make it super searchable. Great, do that. You can spend money with Google on AdWords so that they can sell those self-same AdWords with tweaks to your biggest competitor 6 months from now and have them beat you. And then they can sell you the AdWords that compete with them 6 months later. They actually do this. It turns out they explained it to me once. So you can do that. Great. That's all good. But guess what? You can just talk to people and they'll come to your website. And when they come to your website, that's marketing. So your biggest marketing weapon in your arsenal is actually the humble cold call.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Really powerful. Now, I know that with cold calling, obviously it's challenging, right? And I've done the cold calling. I've done the in-person old school knocking on the doors as well. And there's a potential fear of, rejection. You got to be, obviously you build a lot of grit and resilience. I think everybody should do it for at least, 6 months or something, because it actually builds that a lot within you. But then I think the other problem sometimes with salespeople is how qualified are these, right? Because they want, as qualified as possible so they can get their conversions up or whatever it is in that process that they have to hit their targets. So what do you think about that element about cold calling and how, we can give some more confidence, I guess, to our sales team?
Well, there's a lot of publicly available information about firmographics, about demographics. Some of it about timing. I don't know how much I trust the timing stuff because it has a fairly high false negative rate. That is, if you depend only on folks who show intent, you're leaving the market to those that didn't show intent but actually are ready to buy. False negatives are a bigger problem in business than false positives. They aren't as big a problem for salespeople, though. Salespeople are happy if they make their number, and their number is always reset to something they can make. So that's kind of like a closed game, right? But business owners, I tell you what, that person, that company that ends up with your competitor because you educated them but didn't actually close them, you're just working for your competitor. That's bad in business. That is not a good idea. So when you kind of look at it in the whole, so to speak, it's a very interesting and a very subtle kind of equation out there that you've got to decide, where am I going to put my energy? Well, let's admit it. All target lists in sales, in business, right? My business strategy, I have a target list. Jeffrey Moore taught me many, many years ago, if you haven't reduced your market to a list, you're lying to yourself. A market is always a list. It's a list of companies. You want to dominate that market. You want to get 51% of those, or 50% plus one, to be your customers. then your life gets easy. You're a dominant player in a market. That's good, right? Easy, by the way, was a relative term there. And it's not easy like, I don't know, it's still hard work, right? But it gets a lot easier when you're dominant. So here you've made this list. Let's face it, your list is a hypothesis. It's not guaranteed to all be qualified. So now the real question is how to qualify. Well, your competitor has the same publicly available data you do. So they're qualifying just as well as you. You don't beat anybody by doing anything just as well as they do. You have to do something better than they do it. And the main thing you can do that's better is generate proprietary, private information that only you have. And the only way to do that is to have conversations with these people. So the idea that sales job is to take an easy route from somebody just about to buy to somebody who just bought so they can make their quota and get their commission. Maybe so for salespeople, but for business owners and CEOs, that's laughable, right? That's not their job. Their job is to make sure that you get market coverage and you get the good ones and you leave the crap for your competitors to sell to. That's the real job. So you need to cover that market with conversations, because only conversations generate proprietary information. It's private. It comes out in the words, but it also comes out in the deeds and the follow-ups. It also comes out in the voice. You can listen to the person. It also comes out in the relationship because you can talk to them again. You can clarify, you can follow up, you can solve timing problems, because most disqualification is timing. I mean, you don't generally call on people who literally never need your product. It's just a timing question. Well, how can you learn what their timing is? Like, is some fairy going to come and tell you, oh, Chris isn't buying one of those right now because he bought one of those 3 months ago? No, you're going to have to talk to me and find out what I just bought and what I'm interested in. And if you ask me, is this something for this year? I'll probably say, yes or no. Is it for next year? And next year, keep talking to me because you're going to win. So the key to market dominance is not to let your hypothesis become a theory, a proven theory, without testing it. And the only way to test it reliably is to hold conversations. The beauty is they're really efficient. A 2-minute conversation with somebody is awesome. If you have a message and they don't resonate at all, you're going to have to talk to them again and see if it resonates at some point. Or maybe it doesn't resonate at all. They're truly disqualified. If you hold a discovery call for 15 minutes and there's just nothing there, well, there's nothing there. That's great, right? That's spectacular. So I think we do a lot of stuff in the modern world. We're looking for some magic, some silver bullet. The silver bullet turns out to be inside that other person's midbrain. And it's how do they feel when they're talking to you about talking to you further, so you might be able to really explore solving their problem. That's proprietary information plus relationship. That's how you dominate. But you got to get both. And you don't get either one from publicly available information.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. Very, very powerful. And I know obviously you've been in the tech space a while and with your company, but fully automating a service is inferior to adding a human element, right? Into what you talk about. Humans have to be in the loop. So do you want to talk about that correlation, right, between the humans and the tech element?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, I've been programming since 1968. So I got some idea of what tech can do, right? I was a fair to middling programmer back in, 8 million years ago. We actually used rocks. We chipped out little sort of little rock chips. And that's how we made computers work back then. But, technology, pretty much software technology, and ChatGPT will fool you on this, by the way. It pretty much just goes fast and it doesn't get bored. Well, our two big weaknesses as humans is we're very slow and we get bored extraordinarily quickly. Ask us to do something 10 times, we're likely to start to lose track on about time number 5. Ask us to do something 10 million times, don't even bother, right? For a computer 10 million times, no problem. It doesn't sweat, it doesn't complain, it just does it. Actually, for those of you experimenting with ChatGPT, that's why it seems like such a faithful dog when you ask it a question, because it'll always do something. I just asked it to ChatGPT to write an entire presentation for a conference I'll be speaking at about using stuff like ChatGPT in sales. I figured it was ironic. I'd have it write the thing, and then I'd speak about the thing. But think about that one. When I speak about the thing, when I speak ChatGPT's truth, so to speak, what the audience is going to get is very different from what they would get by reading that. Very, very different. There's a human in the loop. I'm bringing something that helps them decide involuntarily whether or not they're going to put the energy into understanding what's on that page. That's kind of what we do in sales, right? So a human in the loop's a big deal. Now at Connect and Sell, we do this weird thing. You push a button, you get to talk to somebody in about 3 minutes. Like my team today, I was just looking at a little team of 10 SDRs they've talked to. Let me just take a quick look. It's always fun to look. You guys can't see it, but I can see it. I run this little report. They've had 314 conversations with VPs of sales today, and they set 36 meetings, 159 follow-ups, and gotten 8 referrals. And on average, they've waited for a conversation for exactly 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Well, that 3 minutes and 30 seconds, how did that magic happen? We all know you can't get a senior business decision maker on the phone in 3 minutes and 30 seconds, right? And by the way, during that time, they do nothing. They pet their cat, they sip their coffee. I don't know what they do. I don't care, as long as they're relaxed, because they got to talk when the talking is ready to be happening. So what happens in the background? Well, we got a bunch of tech that works phone calls, does dialing and this and that, but who's going to navigate those phone calls when there's a gatekeeper to talk with? And who's going to tell the difference between a person and a voicemail greeting every time? And who's going to know what they really meant when they said, our options have changed, blah, blah, blah. You can actually train technology to do lots of that. And incrementally, we're doing that. We have got great AI in our technology. But when it comes time to talk to that gatekeeper, that's a human being's job. So there's a case where human to human, admin to admin is magic. By the way, salesperson to admin is not magic. Not every time. And my late wife once told me she played some recordings of her transferring ConnectAndSell calls because she was skeptical. She was an EA for a big Silicon Valley CEO. And I asked her, why'd you transfer that call? And she said, well, the guy was so important, he had an admin making his calls for him. What was I going to do? Hang up on her? Right? So there's also, I'll call it, you can design a little social engineering in. You can have your skill as a human being. You are emitting 20,000 bits a second. The technology that somebody's reading in an email or whatever, that's only maybe 500 bits a second. There's a lot of emotional information that can move between two human beings, even if they aren't looking at each other. So you need that on your side all through the process, including navigating something as boring as a phone call, right? Now, if you had to navigate 20 phone calls in a row like a good human being, you're going to get bored. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be frustrated because 19 out of 20 of them went nowhere, right? So, okay, the computer can do most of that well. And then human beings can do, in our case, part of the job that they don't get bored with because they're specialists in it and it's kind of fun. And they get rewarded for it appropriately. And there's no stress, like no selling stress, right? So it's really interesting when you blend humans and machines together, what happens. Now, technology over time can keep taking the boring parts, the repetitive parts, and taking them under its wing. And that's happening. There's no doubt about it. Right now, my technologists are exploring all the phone systems in the world with ChatGPT and other technology to characterize all of their navigation paths in advance and store those. Because by the way, computers also will store an immense amount of data really, really cheap, right? So we store, I don't know, 500 million dials that we analyze, right? So, okay, is that expensive? Not really. It's just hard to get a hold of 500 million dials. So these things have got to work together. There's nothing new about all this. And those of you who are going like, ChatGPT seems like it could sell for me. Not quite, not quite. It can help you. You're probably not as good a writer as you think. Whoever you are listening to this, I bet if we went back and got you in the 9th grade or 10th grade and asked, were you the top writer in your class? Were you it? Did all the teachers say, wow, what great writing? Did you look forward to writing those 5-paragraph essays because you were just going to nail it? Probably not. You're in sales or you're running a business or whatever, right? Well, I tell you what, that ChatGPT beast is an incredible writer. It really is kind of right down the middle. It's not very inventive. It lies through its teeth. So you have to actually check out whenever it claims something is a fact. But it is an extraordinarily clean, explanatory writer, and that could help any salesperson. So, hey, run your stuff through it and say, please summarize, or whatever. My little presentation, I said, please tell me 11 things in AI that we could use in sales, et cetera. I said, no, please give it to me as, points with 3 bullet points each. Faithful dog, didn't get bored, went out and did it again. Copy, paste, send to my sister. I got a presentation, right? That's the kind of stuff that the human in the loop is in the past, right? Is in the learning, and it was all the writing that thing is gobbled up and learned from. Great. It's learned from humans in the past, and it can kind of do spit out the next word pretty darn well. It seems pretty human, but it's not quite like you saying, you know what? There's some reason I don't want to hit send on this email. I'm going to think about it for a little bit. That's something that the AI is not going to do. And that is actually where you win in sales. It's knowing at that moment, there's something that I normally do right now that I'm not going to do because it doesn't feel quite right, because the timing's not right, because I got to go check something out. That's even in the, the easy writing with ChatGPT thing. You're the one who's going to have to decide, is this the right time within this emotional journey that we're both on for this person to get this message from me?
Yeah, awesome. Completely agree with that. So powerful, those different elements. I love that the timing thing is so important in the sales process or generally, as well as ChatGPT, using it as a foundation. That's the way I like to see it. And then we can build on that where possible and put our element into that too. And obviously the pandemic has changed a lot, right? A lot of people work from home. Some people come back in the office, hybrid. It depends, right? Where we are in the world of how that is at the moment. And I guess selling is different now, right? It's potentially, it might have been more in person before. Now it's on Zoom a lot, or maybe it's just on the phone, right? In terms of there. So what are you seeing in terms of the changes there of working, but also, I guess, the differences? I think is a big one between the selling in person, the Zoom, compared to on the phone as well.
Yeah, well, the phone hasn't changed at all. The phone is funny. The phone is like a pipeline into somebody's midbrain. When you're anesthetized, you're under anesthetic, and you think you're out, you're actually still listening. There has been functional MRI studies that show between your ears and your midbrain, there's still listening going on. You're still listening emotionally when you're out, but you aren't seeing anything and you aren't thinking about very much. I don't know, maybe some folks who are listening to this haven't had surgery where they put you out, but it's kind of like close your eyes and then you open your eyes and you're somewhere else. Time has gone by, right? So there's some strange, there's some magic that's available to you remotely using the human voice, which we're highly attuned to pay attention to with regard to tone, with regard to pace, with regard to words also. Words are kind of secondary, though. It's about how somebody sounds. That is, we sing to each other in sales. And when we get our brains resonating through the song, then some relationship magic starts to happen. And this is also true, by the way, outside of sales and romantic relationships. This is kind of how they get started. And it's challenging to get stuff like this started by sending text back and forth to each other. It's just hard, right? So in that sense, the phone hasn't changed at all. And it really hasn't. It hasn't changed, other than it's a little harder to get rid of or get a hold of some people and a little easier to get a hold of other people. For a while, when in the middle of the pandemic, middle being like the 4 or 5 months in, it was much easier to get a hold of people by phone, much easier. Everybody said it was harder, but everybody was answering the phone because who knows who it might be. It might be your boss, right? And there you are at home. And anyway, you're lonely, so you may as well talk to people. Now it's gone back to where it was. It's about a 22-to-1 shot. I can look at my team, which has got some pretty magic fast phone number optimization. We use 16.42 dials today to get a conversation, mostly with VPs of sales, very busy people, most of whom are working from home, even though many of their bosses say they're so much more creative if they just move back from that place 300 miles away that's nice and move back into this horrible area where we live and commute every day, right? Whatever it happens to be. So that stuff hasn't changed. What has changed is we have a lot of these meetings, like you and I are on Zoom right now. And video meetings are incredibly subtle things. Being personable, being relaxed, and still being professional in a video meeting is much, much more challenging than when you meet face to face. There's less cues. You're not quite as sure of yourself, but you kind of have to be. And there's also who's going to lead, right? When we walk into a conference room, where do you sit? You know, whose turf is it? All that stuff is in play, and it's helpful to a professional salesperson, especially one who's been around and knows how to work that stuff. You don't have as much of it in these Zoom meetings. I like to open Zoom meetings by asking somebody a simple question. I just ask them, so it helps me just to know this. Where are you right now on the face of our blue whirling planet? And the reason I ask that is it's really important in a Zoom meeting that we get a sense of being somehow together, even though we're both in very different environments. Well, blue whirling planet gives you an image of the Earth from out in space. There's a very famous picture taken from just, it's Earthrise over the moon, and everybody's seen it. And it kind of says, maybe we're together. And maybe you can speak about where you are with some pride, because I know you're apprehensive. You're meeting me, and I'm going to sell to you. You're not quite sure that that's a great thing, right? Is this really a discovery call, or are you selling to me? So I want that emotion of apprehension to be replaced by another emotion. Well, how about an emotion of pride of place? We both have images of place behind us right now. You have, I see the Sydney Opera House. I've got a boat I first saw in Sydney between me and the Seattle skyline. We have stories around that. We are not in an apprehensive emotional state when we're telling those stories to each other. So I think that stuff's really, really important, and you got to get good at it. You got to get good at it, and you got to let your voice carry that sincerity, that presence, that you're really there. This isn't rote. You're not trying to get to an end. I'm not trying to manipulate you into something. And, there's a lot more meetings now as a result. You meet more strangers that you see now than you used to in sales. And you got to get used to it, because it's easy to get jaded about meetings. That's one of the reasons I don't like internal meetings, because internal meetings wear out their welcome. They wear out the juice that folks have, at least for salespeople, that they need for customer meetings. They need that. They need that energy. You only have so much of it. So stop meeting with everybody internally all the time on Zoom. Leave them alone to do their thing, But by the way, here's another thing. You have an opportunity as a boss to listen to and watch those meetings. And I don't think most of us do this. I used to do a lot more of it than I do now. I'm trying to get back into it. I used to do so much of it when I was out running. I do barefoot endurance running, which is a really stupid thing to do, but I don't like to get hurt. So that's why I do it. And I had a neighbor who said, where's your dog? I said, what do you mean, where's my dog? And he says, you're always yelling at your dog. I think its name is something like shut the F up. It's like, no, I'm yelling at my salesperson. I want him to shut up. But it's a recording, so they can't hear me, but I can't help it, right? But, I'm kind of into it. So that time that you spend listening and being able to come back, not with a whole, like back in the day, I was so great coaching moment, but, there's one little thing that you might want to consider, that kind of conversation. That's super powerful too. So yeah, there's a lot that's changed. And one of the big things is video meetings dominate, and they'll continue to, because they're much, much, much cheaper than getting on an airplane.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So powerful, that section there, and all those tips on what we can do and those little nuances and differences to do that, and including, the connections that we had before, which is really powerful to then, have a great connection and going from there, basically. So, it's been a very powerful episode. You've delivered so much value today. So, what I'd just quickly like to ask as we're wrapping up is, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to everyone watching and listening today?
It's funny. I read an article today about somebody who changed their entire sales life because they were at a place where there was a mass shooting, and they had a really hard time coming back from it. And my wife wrote a book called Love Your Team, a survival guide for sales managers in a hybrid world. And this person who wrote this article said that's what happened to him. He was supported through the process of getting over being in an environment where people were being shot and killed in a nightclub. And he said it changed his sales life because then he took that attitude that his company took with him when he was recovering from this traumatic experience, and he took that into his sales situations and stopped trying to manipulate people to do his bidding. He just started listening to them and sincerely paying attention to them as human beings. I think the key to business and the key to sales is to let each other be human and see if there really is a way that we can be helpful to that other person. And if we do that, it's all really, really easy. It's not hard to get up in the morning. You have no inner conflict. So my advice is get rid of that strong drive to get closed. If you're a closer, you'll close anyway, because all you're doing is offering the gift of finality. But get rid of that insincerity.
Yeah, awesome. Love that. So powerful. Completely agree. And yeah, we connect through our networks where I learned about your awesome journey from having, various roles in the tech space and now being the CEO of ConnectAndSell. Awesome guy, so knowledgeable, so much great advice and tips today. And I'm sure you continue to help companies with your technology that gets their best salespeople 10 times more live conversations with qualified prospects every day. I'm very grateful that we connected and I look forward to working with you. So Chris, how can people find you and get in contact with you?
Well, chris.beall@connectandsell.com. My inbox is flooded, so you could do that. Who knows, right? That's one. My podcast with Corey Frank, Market Dominance Guys, is probably the best way to actually learn what I'm really thinking. I never wanted to do a podcast. It was an accident. It's an attempt to write a book. Finally, ChatGPT wrote the book for me, thank God. And so anyway, MarketDominanceGuys.com. And of course, there's the Connect and Sell website. If you want to have a wild experience, and I do mean a wild business experience, sign up for our test drive. It is not a demo. It's a full day of full production. The thing it reminds me most of was something I had to do once, which is get into the cockpit of a Ferrari 455 and take it out on a Formula One course. It's that fast and it's that crazy. So if you want to really see what is sales like at that 150, 160 miles an hour going down that straightaway and being yelled at, brake hard, brake hard, brake hard, do our test drive. It's completely free. There's a little form on the website somewhere. And it's like the craziest no obligation thing you can do in business.
Yeah, awesome guys. Definitely check out Chris with all of those different areas there in the business websites and the podcast and everything like that. That test drive sounds amazing as well, like going around a track, but a sales track and doing it fast. So I love that, really powerful. And thank you to everyone for watching and listening to this show where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Athin Cassiotis, or visit my website, athincassiotis.com. If you want to grow and scale your business, you can reach out to me in any platform to see if we're a good fit. And I completely agree with you, or do I? The only way we know is if you tune in next time. So until next time, remember that our business grows when we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So remember to design your growth and results.